This story begins in a quiet American town called Pine Street, the kind of place where people wave from their porches, dogs sleep in the middle of the road, and nothing strange ever happens, until it does. Daniel Harper had lived here his entire life, 36 years of routine and repetition, working at the same auto shop, drinking the same cheap coffee, telling the same stories to the same group of friends who pretended to laugh every time. But Daniel wasn't broken by boredom. He was broken by the single memory that refused to leave him alone, a memory of a night he could barely remember, and faces he couldn't forget. He carried guilt like people carried house keys, always in his pocket, always close, always heavy. And every morning when he woke up, he looked in the mirror not to see who he was, but to ask why he was still alive. His therapist called it trauma, his mother called it fate, Daniel called it punishment. Yet, despite his exhaustion with life, Daniel never expected that the truth behind that night was not only darker than he imagined, but also completely different from what he believed. On a cold Thursday morning, when the air smelled like burned rubber and rain, Daniel received a letter, handwritten, beautiful, terrifying. It said only one sentence: "You didn't kill anybody, but someone wants you to believe you did." And that was the moment Pine Street changed forever. Daniel didn't know what to do with the letter, and for a man who already struggled to make sense of the present, being forced to re-examine the past felt like being pushed into cold water with no instructions on how to swim. He sat in his rusty blue pickup truck outside the auto shop, staring at the paper with trembling fingers, reading and rereading the same sentence until it didn't feel like words anymore, but a threat, or maybe a promise. The letter had been mailed from within Pine Street, which meant someone close, someone familiar, someone who knew exactly what Daniel was afraid of, had sent it. For 15 years, Daniel had lived with the belief that a night marked by flashing lights, shattered glass, and a scream that didn't sound human had taken someone's life, and that he was responsible. His memory of the night was fractured, like a cheap mirror dropped on the floor, reflecting pieces of truth but never the whole. But the letter suggested something different, something he had never allowed himself to consider, that his guilt was not earned, but planted. He told himself not to think about it, not now, not while his shift was about to start, but his mind didn't listen. His co-workers noticed he was off, more distracted than usual, even for him. Jake, the kind of friend who spoke in sarcasm because sincerity made him uncomfortable, asked if Daniel was sick, drunk, or dying. And Daniel laughed mechanically, saying, "None of the above." But Jake was right about one thing: something was wrong, and not just today. Daniel had spent years in a fog, convinced the universe was punishing him, convinced that nightmares were simply memories replaying themselves. But today, for the first time, he wondered if the nightmare had been created to keep him quiet. Later that afternoon, after hours of pretending to care about spark plugs and brake pads, Daniel drove to the only place that made him feel both safe and miserable: Pine Street Park. The bench by the fountain was where he came to breathe, or cry, or both. It was also the place where he had last seen Emily, the only person he had ever loved without reservation, the only one who had witnessed him before he became the ghost of himself. She had left town after the accident, or whatever happened that night, and no one ever told him why. People said she couldn't handle the grief, that seeing Daniel reminded her of what she'd lost, but no one ever said what, exactly, she had lost. Daniel believed the story because believing anything else required effort he didn't have. But today, sitting on the cold bench, staring at the fountain that hadn't worked in years, he wondered if Emily had left because she discovered something dangerous. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. A voice, disguised, calm and slow, said his name. Daniel Harper. He froze. The voice continued, "Whatever you remember from that night, it's not the truth." Daniel swallowed hard and whispered, "Who are you?" The caller ignored the question. "You were told a story. A story someone wanted you to believe. You never killed anyone." Daniel's heart slammed against his ribs. Then what happened? The voice paused, as if choosing its words carefully. Someone used you. Someone close to you. Someone who still lives in Pine Street. Before Daniel could speak, the call ended. His phone displayed no trace of the number, no missed call, no record. Like it never happened. Daniel's hands shook wildly now, not from fear but from rage, because he had just realized something that terrified him more than guilt ever had. If he didn't kill anyone, then someone had spent 15 years letting him think he did, and that was a cruelty he couldn't comprehend. He remembered the night only in fragments: headlights, rain, a scream, a body, hands on his shoulders, someone whispering, "You did this, Daniel. You killed her." He never questioned it because he was too drunk, too broken, too scared, and maybe because a part of him believed he was capable of it. On his way home, rain began to fall, heavy and sudden, turning the windshield into a blur, but he didn't slow down. He wanted answers, and he knew exactly where to start: the old sheriff's office, abandoned for years after the scandal that sent half the department into early retirement. The building was dark, damp, and smelled of mold and regret. But Daniel wasn't alone. A figure stood inside, half hidden, watching him with the kind of stillness that suggested intention rather than fear. Daniel stepped forward and whispered, "Who are you?" The stranger didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink. Then, with a voice so familiar it made Daniel's blood run cold, he said, "You shouldn't have come back." And that's when Daniel realized the truth wasn't going to save him, it was going to destroy him. Daniel didn't run, even though every instinct in his body screamed at him to leave that ruined building behind, to pretend he never heard the words that felt like a curse. The stranger stepped forward, revealing a familiar face: Deputy Cole Turner, the man who had been on duty the night of the accident, the man who vanished from Pine Street days after the investigation ended. His hair was shorter, his expression colder. But his eyes still carried that bitter arrogance Daniel remembered. Cole didn't raise a weapon, he didn't need one. His presence alone was threatening. "People moved on, Dan," he said calmly, "you should have too." Daniel clenched his fists, his voice breaking as he asked, "Why did you let me believe I killed someone?" Cole stared at him with the cynical smile of a man who had long stopped believing in justice. "Because it was easier than the truth." Daniel shook his head, trying to control the storm inside him. "What truth?" Cole looked away, jaw tightening, as though he was debating whether to speak or run. "There was no body that night," he finally whispered. Daniel froze, his mind collapsing under the weight of those words. No body meant no death. No death meant no crime. So what happened? Daniel demanded. Cole exhaled shakily. "Someone disappeared, and they wanted the town to think you were responsible. They needed a scapegoat, and you were broken enough to fit the role." Daniel's chest tightened, memories returning like broken glass piercing through flesh: Emily's voice, a scream, rain hitting his face, hands pulling him away, someone whispering it was his fault. "Emily," he breathed. Cole nodded slowly. "She didn't die, Daniel. She ran." The building felt smaller, the air heavier, the truth unbearable. Daniel whispered, barely audible, "Why would she do that?" Cole looked him in the eyes and said, "Because she knew something she wasn't supposed to." And in that moment, Daniel realized he wasn't uncovering the past, he was stepping into a war someone else had started. Daniel didn't leave the building after Cole's revelation. He stood there, feeling as if the ground beneath him had shifted, as if the town he grew up in had always been a stage and he had been performing a role he didn't choose. Cole lit a cigarette with shaky hands, inhaling like a man who carried too many ghosts. "If Emily ran because she knew something," Daniel said, "then someone must have been chasing her." Cole nodded, eyes locked on the crumbling wall instead of Daniel. "People in Pine Street aren't as innocent as you think. Some of them built this town on secrets." The rain hammered against the broken windows, thunder rolling like distant explosions, making every word feel heavier. Daniel tried to piece together memories of Emily, her laughter, her fear, her sudden distance in the weeks before the so-called accident. She had been terrified, not of him, but of someone watching her. Who was after her? Daniel whispered. Cole hesitated, then said, a man named Harrington. He owned half the town, the factories, the police, the narrative. Emily found something that could destroy him. Daniel felt a chill crawl up his spine. The name Harrington had been whispered for years, but always with respect or fear, never truth. And you, Daniel said bitterly, helped him cover it up. Cole didn't deny it. I was young, scared, and they promised everything would be fine if we silenced the story. Daniel laughed, humorless and broken. So you silenced me instead. Cole stared at him with something close to regret. You were drunk, unstable, and grieving. People believed what they were told. Daniel stepped closer, voice shaking with fury. And Emily? Where is she now? Cole extinguished the cigarette against the wall. Alive. Hiding. At least, she was. Daniel felt his heart collapse. Was? Cole nodded slowly. She sent that letter to you. Which means she's back in Pine Street, and whoever she ran from, knows it. A siren wailed in the distance, not a warning, but a signal, and Cole whispered, we don't have much time. Daniel realized he wasn't just searching for answers, he was already being hunted. Daniel didn't ask how Cole knew Emily was back, he simply followed him into the storm, trusting a man he once feared because the truth had left him with no other choice. They drove through Pine Street in silence, past shuttered shops, flickering streetlights, and houses that looked asleep but never truly were. Cole finally spoke, his voice low, tense. Emily didn't find something, she stole it. Files, recordings, names. Evidence that Harrington funded illegal experiments in this town for years. Daniel's stomach twisted. Pine Street, his home, a testing ground for secrets. Experiments on what? He asked. Cole's jaw tightened. People. Daniel's heart dropped. Suddenly, the erratic behavior, the disappearances, the unexplainable tragedies, they weren't accidents, they were outcomes. Why didn't anyone stop him? Daniel asked, though he already feared the answer. Because he owns the law, owns the town, owns the fear that keeps people obedient. They stopped outside an abandoned motel, the kind of place where everything smelled like mildew and failure. Cole led him into room 12, where the wallpaper peeled like old wounds, and the air was thick with dust and memory. On the table lay a metal briefcase. Cole unlocked it, revealing a stack of documents, photographs, and audio tapes, each one proof of something monstrous. Daniel stared at them, horrified. One photo showed Emily, terrified, holding a flash drive. In the background, a man's shadow loomed. She sent that letter because she wants you to help finish what she started, Cole said. Daniel shook his head, overwhelmed. Why me? Cole gave a sad smile. Because Harrington underestimated you. He thought guilt would destroy you, make you small, silent. But you survived. Daniel didn't feel strong, he felt broken, furious, alive. He picked up the files, feeling the weight of them in his hands. Where do we go? He asked. Cole looked at the door, then at the window, then at Daniel. We don't go anywhere. They're already here. Footsteps echoed outside, soft, precise, trained. Daniel's breath caught in his chest as the door handle began to turn, and in that moment, he finally understood, truth wasn't a shield. It was a target. The door burst open before Daniel had time to think, and 3 men in tactical black rushed inside with the cold precision of people trained to eliminate problems, not solve them. Cole shoved the briefcase into Daniel's hands and yelled, "Window, now!" Daniel's heartbeat became thunder as he stumbled toward the glass, rain streaking across it like frantic brushstrokes. A gunshot cracked through the room. Cole fired the first one, not to kill, but to buy seconds. Daniel smashed the window with the briefcase, shards exploding outward into the storm, wind roaring in like an angry witness. "Jump!" Cole shouted, but Daniel hesitated, looking back as the men advanced, weapons raised. He saw something in Cole's eyes: regret, resolve, and a silent apology for 15 years of lies. Daniel jumped, hitting the muddy ground hard, breath ripped from his lungs. He scrambled to his feet as another shot rang out. This one wasn't Cole's. The lights in the motel flickered, followed by a scream cut short. Daniel didn't stop to listen. He ran, clutching the briefcase like a lifeline. The parking lot was empty, abandoned cars drowned in rain, neon signs flickering like dying signals. He ducked behind a truck, trying to steady his breath, but adrenaline had turned his body into a drum. A figure emerged from the motel, one of the men, scanning the darkness with violent patience. Daniel clamped a hand over his mouth, praying the storm would hide him. In the distance, sirens wailed, not police, but private security, the kind that answered to Harrington, not the law. Daniel realized there would be no help, no safe surrender. He looked at the briefcase. Understanding that the evidence inside wasn't just dangerous, it was the only chance anyone in Pine Street had to survive the truth. He had never been a fighter, never been brave, but survival didn't ask for permission. It demanded action. And as headlights swept across the lot, illuminating his hiding place, Daniel whispered to himself, "Emily, I hope you're still alive, because I'm coming." Daniel ran until the parking lot disappeared behind curtains of rain, until the gunfire faded into distant thunder, until he was no longer sure if the pounding in his chest was fear or determination. He reached the edge of Pine Street's industrial district, where rusty warehouses stood like abandoned monuments to someone else's ambition. He ducked into a narrow alley, soaked, shivering, clutching the briefcase as if it were a heart he couldn't let stop beating. He had no plan, no weapon, no allies, except Cole, who might already be dead. He dialed Emily's last known number, fingers trembling, breath uneven. The call didn't ring. It connected immediately, like someone had been waiting. Her voice was barely above a whisper, "Daniel?" The sound of her name spoken by her shattered something inside him. "They're coming for me," he said, voice cracking. "They already came," she replied, fear threading every syllable. "They've been following me for days." Daniel pressed his back against the cold brick wall, lightning flickering above like a warning. "Where are you?" She hesitated, then said, "The old mill." "But don't come alone. They know you're alive, and they think you have the files." Daniel looked down at the briefcase, realizing that possession alone made him lethal in their eyes. "They killed Cole," he whispered, unsure if it was truth or assumption. Emily didn't gasp, didn't cry. Her silence said everything. "Harrington doesn't care who dies," she said. "He only cares who talks." Footsteps echoed at the mouth of the alley, slow, hunting. Daniel ducked lower, heart in freefall. Emily spoke quickly, urgent. "There's a tunnel under the mill. It leads out of town. If we get the files to the state investigation unit, Harrington is finished." Daniel wanted to believe her, to believe justice was possible, but the footsteps grew louder, voices sharper, trained. "I'll find you," he whispered. "I have to." Emily exhaled, fragile but fierce. "Don't come because you feel guilty. Come because you're angry." Before he could answer, the alley lit up with headlights, and voices barked commands. Too many, too close. Emily's final words echoed in his ear, "Run like you're not alone." Daniel bolted into the storm again, realizing that somewhere in this town, A woman who once loved him was risking her life not for redemption, but revenge. Daniel didn't stop running until the industrial district faded into the outskirts of Pine Street, where the road turned into mud and the streetlights gave up trying to illuminate a town that no longer wanted to be seen. His shoes were soaked, his lungs burning, but the briefcase never left his grip. He followed the riverbed, remembering childhood stories about kids daring each other to swim here, unaware that beneath the water flowed secrets bigger than fear. The headlights that chased him earlier vanished, replaced by the eerie silence of a place abandoned by time. He reached the old mill just as lightning split the sky, revealing a massive, decaying structure with shattered windows and rusted metal teeth. He hovered at the entrance, feeling the weight of a decision: step inside and accept the nightmare, or walk away and pretend the truth wasn't bleeding through every shadow. A voice suddenly emerged from the darkness, sharp and merciless. "Drop the case, Harper." Daniel froze. Behind him, two men stood with rifles aimed directly at his spine. He kept his voice steady, though terror choked his throat. "You don't understand what's in this." The taller man laughed with a coldness only power could manufacture. "We don't need to understand. We just need it gone." Daniel tightened his grip, exhausted but defiant. "Harrington won't bury this forever." The man stepped closer, rain dripping from his hood like blood. "Harrington doesn't need forever. He just needs you." Before Daniel could react, a metallic click echoed behind them, followed by a low voice: "Back away." One of the agents turned, gun raised, too slow. A flash of movement, a suppressed shot, and he collapsed into the mud. The other man lunged for Daniel, but a second shot dropped him mid-stride. Daniel spun around and saw a figure in a rain-soaked coat, breathing hard, gun shaking slightly. Emily stepped into the light, older, bruised, eyes burning with a fury that had survived 15 years of running. "You took long enough," she whispered. Daniel exhaled a breath he didn't realize he'd held. "I thought you were dead." She shook her head. "Dead is easier. They don't chase dead people." Then, with a glance toward the mill, she said, "This place is where it started, and it's where it ends." And for the first time, Daniel understood, this wasn't escape. This was confrontation. Daniel followed Emily into the mill, the briefcase heavy in his hands and the storm roaring behind them like a gate closing. Inside, the air smelled of rust, chemicals, and forgotten sin. Water dripped from the ceiling in slow, steady beats, like a ticking clock counting down to something neither of them could escape. Emily moved with purpose, limping slightly, a reminder of the life she had survived rather than lived. Daniel wanted to ask where she had been, who she had trusted, how she had stayed alive, but the answers would come at a cost neither of them could afford right now. They descended a metal staircase that groaned under their weight, leading to a basement filled with old machinery and rows of locked doors. "This is where Harrington's research happened," Emily whispered. "Where they turned people into data." Daniel imagined children, families, ordinary residents of Pine Street strapped to tables, transformed into experiments because someone in power had decided their lives were disposable. "Why didn't you tell me back then?" he asked, voice shaking. Emily stopped, facing him with eyes full of exhaustion and guilt. "Because you were drowning. And I didn't want to pull you under with me." Daniel swallowed hard, realizing that her disappearance hadn't been abandonment. It had been an act of mercy, twisted by circumstance. They reached the end of the hall, where a large steel door stood half open, light flickering inside. Emily raised her gun, motioning for silence. They entered cautiously, finding a room filled with file cabinets, computers, and a large monitor displaying names, codes, and medical records. Daniel recognized some of the names, people who had died suddenly, without explanation. Emily connected a flash drive to the system, her hands trembling with urgency. "We download everything, then destroy the source," she said. "It's the only way to make sure Harrington can't rebuild." Daniel nodded, helping her pull files, stack papers, tear drives from machines. For a moment, it felt like they were winning, like justice was possible. But then a voice echoed from the doorway, smooth, confident, deadly. "I should thank you both," Harrington said, stepping into the room with a gun, his suit untouched by the storm. "You've done the one thing I couldn't, gather all the evidence in one place." Emily's breath caught. Daniel froze. And Harrington smiled, a predator savoring victory. "Now, all I have to do is erase you." Michael walked along the empty hallway of the abandoned hospital, every step echoing like a whisper from the past, reminding him that he wasn't just walking into a building but stepping into the final chapter of secrets that had been hidden for decades. The flashlight in his hand flickered, casting shaky light over walls stained with time and shadows that moved in patterns that felt too alive to be coincidence. He kept replaying the night he found out the truth, how his father, a respected surgeon, had been forced to participate in illegal human experiments designed to upgrade soldiers, but that ended with innocent people disappearing, and every missing person connected to a system that protected power more than people. Now, Michael wasn't just chasing the truth, he was carrying the guilt of a legacy he never asked for, a legacy he didn't deserve, and yet one he felt responsible to destroy. He pushed open the heavy metal door to the operating theater, the smell of rust mixing with faint traces of chemicals, and on the wall, written in faded red paint, were the words, "We didn't die, we were erased." His heart dropped as he realized these weren't patients, they were volunteers who trusted a system that betrayed them. Suddenly, a voice echoed behind him, calm yet threatening, "You were never supposed to see this. Your father fought to shut it down, but you're reopening a wound that will swallow you whole." Michael turned slowly, expecting a ghost from the past, but instead faced a living reminder of everything he feared, the project leader, old yet terrifyingly composed, a man who had sacrificed morality for evolution. And in that moment, Michael understood, truth wasn't just hidden, it was hunted. The project leader stepped forward with a stiffness that didn't come from age but from a lifetime of carrying the weight of decisions that broke people, and Michael could see in his eyes that this wasn't a villain made of malice, but a man built from the belief that progress justified sacrifice. He raised a thin hand, almost gentle, and said, "Your father tried to save them, but he didn't understand. You can't build a new world without tearing down the old one." Michael felt a surge of anger, not because the words were cruel, but because they sounded rehearsed, repeated, like prayers spoken by someone who traded humanity for a mission. He scanned the room and noticed something strange, machines wired into the walls, silent but still powered, screens flickering with faint green code, as if the experiment hadn't been shut down at all, just paused, waiting. "You didn't stop," Michael whispered, more realization than accusation. The man's smile was small, exhausted, but unwavering. "We perfected it." Before Michael could reply, a metal door on the far side slid open, revealing figures standing in dim light, silent, tall, motionless. They weren't monsters, they weren't corpses, they were people who had been pushed beyond natural limits, with eyes that reflected light like predators, and posture too controlled to be human instinct. Fear clenched Michael's stomach, but deeper than fear was sadness, because these weren't soldiers, they were victims repurposed into prototypes. The leader gestured toward them, almost proudly. "They don't feel pain, fear, or doubt. They were built to protect a world too fragile to defend itself." Michael shook his head, voice breaking, "You erased who they were." The man didn't argue, he didn't need to. The silence of the figures was answer enough. Somewhere inside Michael, something shifted, not just anger, but a desperate need to stop this before it spread, before the world outside became infected by the same logic. That survival was worth more than souls. And as he stared at the leader, he realized the truth. This fight wasn't about exposing a secret anymore, it was about preventing a future that no one asked for. Michael backed away slowly, aware that the prototypes tracked movement with an animal precision, like they were waiting for permission to breathe, waiting for command, and the unsettling silence in the room made every second feel stretched, distorted, as if time itself feared what would happen next. The project leader pressed a button on a small remote, and suddenly, lights flickered to life above the figures, revealing tubes, scars, and surgical symbols burned into their skin, proof that evolution had been forced, not earned. "They aren't prisoners," he said, voice firm, "they're humanity's insurance policy." But Michael could see the truth in their empty eyes. Whatever humanity they once had was buried beneath layers of programming and trauma. "What did you do to their minds?" Michael asked, voice shaking, because he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. The man sighed, not with guilt but with disappointment, like a teacher explaining something obvious to a stubborn student. "We removed the parts that cause chaos, fear, grief, hesitation. We made them efficient." Michael realized this wasn't science. It was a war on the human heart. He took another shaky step, and instantly, the prototypes snapped their heads toward him, synchronized, mechanical, terrifying, yet eerily graceful. Their movements weren't violent, just impossibly controlled, like dancers rehearsing a deadly routine. "See," the leader said softly, "no hesitation." Michael's breath caught. If they could move like that without orders, what could they do with them? He thought of the world outside, families, streets, children, and imagined these enhanced beings walking among them, unseen, unstoppable. "You're not saving humanity," he said, voice low, "you're replacing it." The leader didn't flinch, didn't defend himself. Instead, he whispered, "Humanity had its chance." And in that moment, Michael understood the full horror. This wasn't an experiment gone wrong. It was a plan fully realized, ready to be unleashed. He clenched his fist, pulse hammering, and made a silent promise to himself. Even if he couldn't save everyone, he would stop this nightmare from ever leaving the shadows, even if it cost him everything. Michael knew he had no time left, because once the leader activated the final sequence, the prototypes wouldn't stay in this basement. They would be deployed, scattered into cities, integrated into systems that would turn the world into a controlled organism without consent, without identity, without resistance. He scanned the room and noticed the old emergency generator panel, rusted but still wired, and remembered something his father once told him: "Machines can be smarter than humans, but they still need power. Cut the heart, everything dies." The leader must have sensed his thought, because he stepped between Michael and the panel, speaking not like an enemy, but like someone pleading to be understood. "We built them because humanity destroys itself. We offered order where chaos thrives." Michael shook his head, because the summary of everything he witnessed told a different truth. People hadn't died because the world was chaotic. They died because someone believed they could decide who deserved to exist. "You didn't save lives," Michael said quietly, "you erased them." The prototypes shifted, reacting to the rising tension like predators feeling a storm, and for a moment, Michael wondered if they recognized any memory of who they were before, or if their minds had been sterilized into total obedience. But there was no time to figure it out. The leader raised his hand toward the console, ready to release the system permanently. And Michael lunged, grabbing a fallen metal rod and swinging with a desperation born from grief more than courage. Sparks burst, alarms screamed, and lights flickered violently, sending the room into chaos. The prototypes twitched, confused, unstable, like broken machines searching for instruction, and Michael realized he had one chance: to shut everything down, even if it shut him down with it. This wasn't just about exposing the truth anymore. It was about preventing a future where human emotion was replaced by engineered perfection. The world didn't need flawless beings. It needed flawed souls who could learn, feel, and heal. Michael slammed the emergency override with his last strength, and the entire facility shuddered, power draining from every corner like a dying heartbeat, while the prototypes collapsed to their knees, not screaming, just falling silently, like statues finally released from an unnatural command. And in their stillness, Michael felt the tragedy of what had been stolen, lives that might have loved, laughed, grown, if not turned into tools for someone else's version of salvation. The leader staggered back, stunned, whispering, "You doomed us. but Michael whispered back, voice trembling, "You forgot what being human means." Sparks erupted as the system overloaded, explosions ripping through the walls, heat flooding the room, and Michael knew he wouldn't walk away from this, but strangely, he felt peace, because ending this nightmare meant ending a cycle of control disguised as progress. He thought of his father, of all the victims, and of a world that would never know how close it came to being reshaped by fear, and hoped that someone, someday, would value imperfect humanity enough to protect it. As flames swallowed the operating theater, Michael didn't run. He stood firm, a final act of defiance, a reminder that some battles are won not by surviving, but by choosing what must not survive. When the facility collapsed, it didn't bury a hero or a villain, it buried proof of what happens when innovation forgets empathy. And somewhere above, life continued, fragile, messy, unpredictable, but real. The message of Michael's story wasn't about monsters or science. It was a reminder that humanity's strength isn't in perfection, but in the ability to feel pain, confront darkness, and still choose compassion. Because progress without conscience isn't evolution, it's extinction. In a forgotten underground facility, Michael uncovers the horrific legacy left by his father, a secret government project designed to replace flawed humans with emotionless, obedient prototypes. What begins as a search for answers becomes a battle against a twisted vision of progress that sacrificed innocence for evolution. Michael faces a leader who believes humanity is too chaotic to survive, and the only way forward is to erase fear, pain, and identity. But Michael sees the truth: these weren't creations, they were stolen lives. With the world moments away from being infiltrated by perfect, soulless beings, he sacrifices everything to shut down the system, destroying not just machines, but the idea that perfection is more valuable than humanity. He doesn't escape, but his final act saves a future he'll never see. This story isn't about heroes or monsters, it's a reminder that being human means feeling, failing, breaking, and still choosing compassion. Because evolution without empathy is not progress, it's extinction.